Hello, this is Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat, the show trying to make the world safe for ADHDers. ADHDers, as all us parents know, and a lot of you do, that we have difficulties, or that ADHDers have difficulties doing stuff they don't like to do. That's when school, it's one grade, one semester, something like that. But when you start to think about careers, what you want to do with the rest of your life, then you have it's a bigger task, and you want to make sure you get it right. Now, most of us, even like right now, most high school seniors are starting to get their college admissions reviews, and we're going to send them off to college, and hopefully they're going to find out what they want to do with their lives. That's sort of a sketchy way to do it, and I would highly recommend that we make it a little more scientifically based program. And I'm going to, this is not exactly what I was going to talk about, but it feeds into being able to eventually get a job that you like. But there are all kinds of interest tests available. They're scientifically researched, they're pretty accurate, and they can help you and your child with the decision on what to major in and what to study and all that stuff. And it's worth a little money ahead because, for most of us, sending a kid to college is the most expensive thing we do in our lives. It's more expensive than buying a house, for crying out loud. So that would be one of the main things to consider. There are a bunch of them that are, like I particularly like one called Values in Action, VIA for short. And you just answer about 20, 30 minutes of questions, and you get this nice thing sent to you that tells you what your best likes, your real loves for are. And I think it's reasonably accurate. I've taken it like 3 times in my life, and it came out pretty much exactly the same each time. And that's some measure of validity. But then you get out where you have to start looking for a job, and jobs are jobs are a little bit fickle, actually. When we're seeing more change now than I think, well, certainly than my parents did, and for most of my life, it was a lot slower change of pace than I had to put up with. I mean, think about it right now. How long have we had AI as a big deal? A couple of years now, and it's restructuring a lot of things, a lot of careers. So you've got to have a kind of a general direction that you want to go, and it can't just be so specific that if that industry starts taking a hit, has problems, you don't want it to be so that you can no longer survive, or find work. And it is possible that can happen. But generally speaking, when we're talking about jobs, ADHDers, they need a fast moving, creative, energetic environment. And that can be a lot of different things, but they need to be, and it's something they really like. Okay. And for ADHDers, most of the time, if they're not bored, if they're doing something that requires creativity and problem solving and all that sort of thing, and it's exciting to them, they focus on it, they hyper focus on it, they will, they're likely to stay in that and do pretty well. And ideally, it also, if it's not actually physical, as long as it allows for some frequent movement and that sort of thing, they're probably going to do better at it too. Uh, and the but the the big deal. Think of ADHDers as creative creators, creative problem solvers. They see solutions that other people don't normally see. Uh, they don't do tedium very well. They don't like boring. They don't like repetitive. They don't like stuff that they have to do over and over and over again, generally. Okay. Now, when you're talking about this, you're talking, generalities, and there are always going to be one or two people who get into something that totally doesn't appear, at least, to match what I've been saying. Okay. I mean, there are some of them, well, like I think of, when I think of it like being an accountant, I think, oh God, all those rows and columns and no. But I know some people are fascinated by that. And even though they have ADHD, they do really well as, in the, I guess it's more creative accounting kinds of things, but they do pretty well with it. It's well beyond basic bookkeeping, and they just seem to love it. And I had a patient who was, I mean, I've used his example quite a number of times because he is, has ADHD and he also has dyslexia. His dad was a lawyer. His grandfather was a lawyer. For all I know, his great grandfather was a lawyer. And he, by God, had to be a lawyer. And, I would, if you just tell me those characteristics, that he's ADHD and he's got dyslexia, and I see this picture of a lawyer sitting there reading all that arcane legalese that they have to wade through, and I'd say this boy is not gonna be happy. It's not gonna be good. But he's doing quite well. Thank you very much. He's basically taken over the law practice, the family law practice, and as far as I know, is doing well. So there are specific situations that will make it so you can go and compensate and do well in a vocation that most people would think, ADHD would never survive in that. I mean, part of the deal is it fun for you? Can you make it fun? And do you have enough, freedom to be able to do that sort of thing? So the kinds of things that, there are tons of vocations that people like, but generally they're consistent and they're not boring. They're creative. They feel like it's meaningful. There's a purpose to it. And there's a chance to do some physical stuff. Okay. Mental health is a great area for ADHDers, psychology, social work, those kinds of practices. A lot of medical practices like occupational therapy, physical therapy. I mean, you're active all the time. You're on the mat. You're pulling people around, making them do this, that, or the other, and you see improvements, and that's reassuring and makes you feel pretty good about it. They also do pretty well as teachers. Education system. I know in my area, seems like teachers are equally divided. There are either teachers who are ADHD themselves and or have ADHD children, or there are teachers who don't understand a thing about ADHD and could care less. So it's kind of an extreme, but education is a good field. Technology, surprisingly, I know tons of people who are computer whizzes. They're and I actually had a guy who used to do the computers in my office, and I'm trying to figure out what he did to make something we had a problem with work. And he said, "Oh," I said, "How'd you do that exactly?" And I'm expecting kind of a checklist kind of thing. "Oh no." He said, "Well, I just keep pushing buttons till I get what I want." Really? You just push buttons till you get what you want? Of course, I grew up in the Smith Corona era. I went off to college with 2 suitcases and my portable typewriter, uh, which always astounds me when I see kids going to school now when their parents have had to rent a truck to take all their junk to school. It was a little different back in my day, but the same thing applies. Is that nowadays with technology and most of technology, well, let's just say there's more self-taught than there used to be. I mean, it used to be if you were working in a company, you had a bachelor's degree in something, maybe business, maybe not, but something that proved that you knew how to learn stuff. With computers the way they are and the way they change, almost nobody sticks around for a whole degree uh, in IT, I believe is the most common word term now. And they still get hired. Matter of fact, my son has a number of friends who are working for the government, d- detecting computer fraud and spammers and all that other stuff. And they got into it because they got busted themselves for being spammers, and and they have no formal training. There's not a degree in the group, but they're considered highly valuable, and they have a unique way of looking at things that not everybody does. So anyway, so technology is a great one. Sales, oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, that's the most obvious one you'd think. Um, ADHDers, they generally know how to talk and they love doing it. So that's a big one. Graphic designers, uh, pretty much, surprisingly, almost every profession that's in the medical area or the healthcare area has a lot of ADHDers in it. And of course, just general artists, uh, all kinds. My brother, who is maybe ADHD, is a metal sculptor. My son, who definitely is a jewelry designer. He sits there at the bench doing little things, making little tiny marks and wax and that kind of stuff. I would have thought that would drive him nuts, but it grabs him. It's kind of artistic, and he really likes it. So, um, oh, I forgot there is a huge area now for ADHD in entrepreneurship with the kinds of software that have been developed and are still being developed that make it easier to get on, to design a website, to have a sales page and all that stuff that you need to be an entrepreneur. uh, it is estimated that 70 to 80% of all entrepreneurs have ADHD. And I go to a lot of the conferences, so I I will agree with that. As a matter of fact, when I mentioned that I work with ADHD, I always have a small crowd of people asking me questions. But entrepreneurship is perfect. It's interesting as you want to make it. It requires some fast decisions and some fast work. It requires uh, creativity and a certain amount of passion, and you're controlling it yourself. Nobody's telling you got to do this, that, or the other, and so it's just about perfect for an ADHD. And like I said, 70 to 80% of all entrepreneurs, people who go to the big meetings and that sort of stuff, which means they're doing pretty well, are, well, there's a high percentage of people with ADHD in that group. So I always want to remember that. And sometimes within a specific profession, it depends on what part of that profession you're working in. Like lawyers, there are lawyers who basically work, they work with finances, they work with businesses, and then there are the ones who work with trial stuff, liability and criminal and all. Anyway, I started to say something that would be politically incorrect, but there are some exciting things in the legal world, and frequently you will see people who regularly defend high level people, whether it's for the business actions or because of the fact that they have actually committed a crime, but they're high level, so that's stimulating enough that ADHDers will do it. I know a number of the lawyers in town that have ADHD, and they have children with ADHD, and frankly, most of them have never been treated. So somehow they figured out how to get through everything, and and there's nothing I can imagine that's more boring than having to study tax law, or even preparing for court would be like, oh my God. And all the arcane language that most legal stuff is written in. Try reading the even the transportation laws and that sort of thing are just, it's a kind of a, well, it's just, shall we say, it's definitely not the kind of fast-paced, don't use any excess words that you don't need sort of thing that I learned in journalism school. It's definitely a very arcane language with multiple dependent clauses and all those other things that you learned probably in English and then forgot as soon as you could. But anyway, so the deal that ADHD are going to have troubles with is because of their distractibility, their poor time management, their disorganization, the fact that boredom nearly kills them, and that they need a place that they can have high energy. And so there are some jobs that just aren't ever going to be like that. I think, sitting in a cubicle all day, every day would probably be a huge problem for most ADHDers. And the other thing you've got to watch out for is that not all companies are sensitive to ADHD. And you've got to have a good environment where they understand ADHD and that sort of thing. I mean, technically they're supposed to make accommodations for ADHD, but many companies don't outright say they're not going to do it. They just don't do it. I mean, I had a patient older guy who was having some troubles at work, and he wasn't able to negotiate anything with them. And we tested him. Yeah, he had ADHD. He had a good part of it, but they wouldn't do anything for him. He even asked him to just like turn off the radio playing, sort of hip hop kind of music. And he just, they wouldn't do that. I mean, they basically forced him out of the job. And, he said, well, yeah, I could sue, but it'd take forever and I probably would never make the money back. So you've got to be careful about that. And they've got to be careful when they're applying for jobs and that sort of stuff. Make sure that the company they're going to has a good reputation for working with people. And I even, one of the things with ADHDers is there's always should I tell the boss that I have ADHD? And the answer is a ringing, it depends. Okay. If your boss is pretty sensitive to this sort of thing, perhaps he has ADHD himself. That happens a fair amount. But if those things are happening, and you're aware that he's got it himself, or he has a kid who's got it, or then you're okay, and then you've really got to make a decision. You need to look around. If you've already got the job, and just look around and see what happens to people who have special needs and that sort of stuff. If they get taken care of, or if they get unjobbed, then you probably don't want to say anything. Although, it's your legal right, but they got ways, and I was kind of naive about that when I first started working with a lot of ADHD, because you learn this stuff in grad school, and it's all, oh boy, this is what we need to do and stuff, and no questions about it. And then you get out in the real world and you realize, there's some questions about that. We don't want to just, without even thinking about it, ask for accommodations, because we may get a surprise instead of accommodations. Anyway, so on that slightly unpleasant note, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this has been Dr. G's ADHD Chat. And my website is terrygingrassphd.com, and I have availability for a couple of people for coaching. If you're of a mind to do that, coaching is pretty much a lifelong thing for most ADHDers, especially if they're in corporate kind of climates. You need to have a full quiver full of accommodation strategies and competencies, kind of things that how to use to help you function, and that changes over time as your position in the business structure changes. So give me a buzz if that's of an interest, and we will catch you next time.